Budtenders are the gatekeepers of this industry, whether we recognize it or not. Most of the people that are going into these cannabis dispensaries, especially first-time purchasers, they walk up and they're immediately influenced by what that budtender has to say.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking in. This is our Traded Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. Good week to say the least. I think for the most part, cannabis earnings. A lot of companies obviously published their earnings reports this week. Some eye-openers for sure, as we touched on Green Thumb Industries earlier this week. MariMed came out with some really good numbers. We're going to dive into that. But before we begin, let's welcome in our two co-hosts. Lead financial writer for the Dales Report, Benjamin A. Smith. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see everyone here. Great start to the week in earnings season in cannabis. No blow-ups, so that's step one. So we're going to get into it soon. Good to see everyone.
Good to see you. Anthony Verrill, millennial entrepreneur. Good to see you. Looks like somebody's hitting the golf course in about an hour or two.
Yeah, I've got a tee time in about 2 hours that I'm heading out to with some friends in town.
Where are you playing?
Fort Lauderdale Country Club.
Ooh, good club.
Yeah.
Course, tough, challenging. Never played it.
It's pretty easy and it's short, but it's private, so we play quickly and it's a good round.
Tough life. What's the temperature in Florida today?
It's fucking hot. So it's not tough life. I'll be sweating my ass off in about 2 hours. It's probably, I think it's about 83 degrees out right now, but the humidity's pretty high.
Can't relate to that right now, Ben, but hopefully we get some of that weather coming soon. But as I said off the top, let's continue this week as we go down this path of earnings season, as we dive into the next stop, which is MariMed, who released fourth quarter and full year earnings, which, like Green Thumb, left most investors, I would say, satisfied. Unlike Green Thumb, MariMed revenue were up sequentially 5.6% to $35.8 million, although gross margin declined by a comparable amount. GAAP net income rose from $2.7 million to $4.8 as well. So, Ben, real quick, give us your take on this report. This is a company that's building slowly but surely and very quietly some momentum.
Yeah, my first impressions were I like the report a lot. I found it very similar to Green Thumb Industries in a lot of ways because the gross margins declined by a similar amount, although revenues increased. But when you're looking at the guidance for next year, it looks very stable to me. They're guiding to $150 million in revenues for the full year 2023, which would be a 12% increase if that's achieved. Adjusted EBITDA, they're guiding to $35 million, which would be a sizable increase from 2022. So things are just, the needle's pointing up. And in these times, I think that's very solid growth for this business. I mean, yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely no blow up here. Definitely, I would say a very solidly inline report, and I think investors should be happy about that. And I was impressed with the results.
Well, the biggest takeaway, I interviewed their chief operating officer last week, Timothy Shaw, and he was talking about how they're winning market share with one of their products in the state of Massachusetts, which is a highly competitive market. But Anthony, the reason why is because people love the product. Even their edibles, Betty's Eddies, it's making its way into Illinois, and like people are very excited because it was available at one time. But this goes back to what we've discussed in the last couple of episodes or podcasts. Is like, forget all expanding out and all this stuff when it comes to like getting market share within the company. It stems back to one important thing and where we are in this space right now. It's the quality of product and what it can do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we've went over that before, that I think when you look at the massive tier 1 MSOs, like that's great, but really what's probably sustainable are the brands that have came out of places like Massachusetts, like California, like Nevada. Quality product in this industry has staying power. Scale, it has diminishing returns, as we've seen with right. price compression and with companies being able to go into these markets, make a huge splash, which is easy when these markets are brand new, and then you just start to see new entrants come in, take market share, quality products start to rise. So I mean, yeah, cannabis is a quality game. If you can develop a brand and you can develop consistent, good product, and then grow around that, that's going to be a recipe for long-term sustainability and success.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, 100%, right, Ben?
Yeah, I think so, especially in the absence of marketing. Although that dynamic's a little bit better in the U.S., still it is limited to a large degree. So your brands are going to start out word of mouth, referrals. That's how you grow products. That's how you get a good reputation. And I think that has a lot of staying power, has a lot of value in times where you can't just brand on TV and brand on the radio to a large degree. So yeah, absolutely.
Outside of the quality of product, Anthony, what are like 2 or 3 important things that you look for when it comes to the quality of branding?
Shelf appeal. Shelf appeal is very important. I mean, especially in the United States, like these companies don't get to really market per se directly to consumers. I mean, you have markets like California, Colorado, Nevada, where you'll see cannabis brands on billboards and you'll see out of home advertising, but you're not getting these social media ads that you're getting hit with. You're not getting these digital ads that you're getting hit with. So, I mean, for me, when I was very early in my cannabis consumer days, it would be eye appeal. If I walk in and there's literally, it's the same setup at most dispensaries. You either have a case or you have a wall, and all of the products are just sitting there next to each other. So for me, it was eye appeal of packaging, which packaging I still think is very important.
Makes sense.
And then it's the name, something that's catchy. Wana Edibles is catchy. Wild Edibles is catchy. Thinking of other products, 710 Labs, their product, when you look at the packaging, it's an art piece. They've got like bespoke artists that they have that come in and enhance the packaging. Granted, that product speaks for itself just from a consumption standpoint, but it's very well thought out top to bottom. You have to have those intangibles if you really want to have have really success with the cannabis consumer. And then the other thing that I'd be looking for, which I look for a lot, especially when we were investing in brands, is the level of education that they're doing in grassroots marketing at the bud tender level. Because unfortunately, tying into marketing, that bud tender heavily influences the cannabis consumer's buying decisions. If that bud tender is well educated in your product, if they're a fan of your product, if they're a consumer of your product, they're going to talk about it to people. So like two companies that I invested in was Foria, which was a THC-based sexual lubricant, and then Plus Products, which at one point were the #1 gummy in California. Every time I would go to the markets that those 2 products were in, I would go to the bud tenders and ask them about the products. If they said, yeah, I don't even know about them, I'd be like, all right, well, this is a problem, especially if I'm in like a MedMen or a larger brand of a chain of dispensary. And then if they said yes, I'd ask them, all right, well, what do you like about it? Do you recommend it? Where would you see this really on the list of what you're going to recommend to a consumer? And then have a conversation with them as to why. Bud tenders are the gatekeepers of this industry, whether we recognize it or not. Most of the people that are going into these cannabis dispensaries, especially first-time purchasers, they walk up and they're immediately influenced by what that bud tender has to say. And I do know firsthand that companies do invest a lot of money in this grassroots experiential marketing.
Yeah, I wanted to
educating
ask
the bud tenders. Yeah.
How much of a focus or strategy do you think that is involved with a lot of companies to what you're saying?
They're all doing
what yeah, and when I'm walking in and I see a bud tender, what separates one from I guess one that's really good versus one that's average?
Personality, passionate about the product. Like you go to Colorado, I had like a 30-minute conversation with the bud tender the last time I was in like a Medicine Man dispensary in Colorado. They're very well done dispensaries. It's a very good retail experience, and you can tell that they care about educating their bud tenders. But the guy knew, this fucking guy blew my mind. Like he knew the terpene profile of every product that I was pointing out. He knew how it reacts with other products. He had like an entire he could tell me on how he was like a little bit too much into it, but it's good because the passion shows through. He was like, well, I kind of take this when I'm feeling like creative or want to go through like a hike, or if I want to go to sleep, I'm taking this. But he was knowledgeable to the point where he was rifling off the terpene profiles and the THC percentages of everything that we were asking for. And while that really doesn't play too much into the novice consumer decisions, for me, I'm buying things based on terpene profile, based on THC content. So it's very important for me, especially when I'm seeing products that I don't know for the first time.
Yeah. Ben, this is all helpful information, and clear MariMed is doing a lot of this stuff right now. As you said, 12% year-over-year increase if achieved with gross margin in line with full year of 2022, and non-GAAP adjusted EBITDA of $35 million plus. CapEx is projected to be $30 million. These are some strong numbers long-term for this company. Like, I know I asked you, like, what was your take basically on what the earnings report was, but what's this say about MariMed moving into, like, you know, this year and actually growing as a company going into 2024 as well?
Well, I think this says a lot about the stability of their business, right? Anthony talked about Plus Brands owning, you know, the number one edibles at one point, or one of the brands in California. And I don't know if that is the case anymore, but there is staying power here with the operational side of MariMed. Like, they're going to just grow their balance sheet, cash on the balance sheet. They're obviously generating cash. One of the few companies actually that have a net income, positive net income, and are generating consistent cash to the balance sheet. So yeah, it's just more stability. It's solid growth. And you know, they're growing their business, and they have, you know, some of the top brands according to BDS in Massachusetts. So, you know, it's a company you want to be associated with or look into if you're thinking about investing in the space, because they're not hemorrhaging cash like a lot of others. Yeah.
Well, they've indicated they're the hunter, not the hunted. But outside of them, if you've got a good model and play with good product, we've discussed, we don't really see a lot of mergers and acquisitions happen. There's just a lot of companies that are undercapitalized, and as they bleed out, do some of these large MSOs start picking up some of those assets, which, you know, will happen.
Yeah, you saw it happen with Ermont.
Start picking up those assets. Yeah.
You saw it happen with Ermont, with MariMed, a very strategic acquisition, or it hasn't closed yet, but they're intending to, and they're picking that up in receivership. And for those who don't know what that is, it's basically a company that is usually got into some financial trouble and they can't operate the business anymore, and they're looking to sell their assets. So the secured investors of those assets, the preferred investors, will go to a court and say, look, can you sell those assets so they can return the money? So basically, they're going to sell these assets to them, and they want to buy it, and it's usually going to happen at a pretty good price if they're getting receivership. So, you know, some of these companies don't have to go out and spend hundreds of millions of dollars, do a big Columbia Care type acquisition. You know, they could just wait for some of these smaller operators to get into trouble in these times, and then pick up, do vulture pickups for cheap. And I think you're going to see a lot of MSOs do that.
Best way to build. Yeah, it's literally the best way to build.
That's
wait until there's a 10-car. Wait until there's a 10-car pile up. Go find some distressed assets that are successful, just very poorly run, and then roll them in.
Yeah, that's what I would be doing too. If I was a CEO, absolutely, I'd be doing that in every single state where I wasn't maxed out on my retail cap.
Like buying waterfront property in Florida in 2008, right?
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Let's quick shift to crypto. News from Gary Gensler this week, Anthony, where he said, quote, he simply said crypto exchanges may not be qualified custodians. And as a result, we saw what's called a flash crash where the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum went down 5%. So I got to ask, Anthony, why should investors in this space care about someone who it appears in some ways doesn't really fundamentally understand it?
So, I mean,
is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say, but at the same time, like, it's like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, crypto exchanges right now are not engineered or built to fall under the purview of what the SEC deems a qualified custodian. Those rules and those regulations were made for traditional financial institutions, and that is the regulations that are put in place. Like, Gary saying this, it's like, okay, and like, if anything, he's at fault because we've just been sitting here going in circles around crypto regulation. Nothing has gotten passed. No momentum has gotten put forward. And it's just opaque across the board. Like, sure, him coming out and saying that is great, but it's like, oh, and? Like, there was there's nothing behind what he said except
Captain Obvious. If this is Captain Obvious amongst investors in the space, why did it go down 5%?
Knee jerk. I mean, knee jerk reaction. I mean, you've got a lot of investors and you've got a lot of speculators that are in the United States that have money in CEXs. And if somebody sees a headline that says, oh, there might be an existential crisis, like the SEC's cracking down on CEXs, centralized exchanges such as Coinbase cracking, et cetera, I'm going to sell my crypto and put it into USD, or I'm going to take my money out of those exchanges. People that I know didn't sell shit. If anything, they're waiting for another dip and they're buying. But this is just poking the bear, and it's just unnecessary commentary that we don't need.
Now, Anthony, speaking of existential crisis, I want to get your take on Silvergate Capital, which was down like 54% yesterday, and on news that they didn't make their 2022 annual filing, and now it's a going concern risk. So that's another blow up in the crypto space. Bitcoin wasn't really hit all that much, nor should it necessarily be. But what is your take on that whole situation? No. Is that company in trouble?
So, I mean, I think Silvergate's down 97% year to date or something crazy. So by definition, I'd say, yes, they are in trouble. Having a 67% drop in one day would have done that enough. But I mean, what they're used for is they're used to like remunerate people's funds from fiat to crypto and crypto to fiat in the United States, kind of like how the CEXs leverage them as an on-ramp for consumer deposits. I don't know what's going on, but I'm almost positive that they're the ones that do the conversion and the custodial work for like Binance in the US. They probably were working with FTX US as well. So their books probably right now look pretty convoluted. They simply came out and said that our auditors just aren't ready yet to sign off on the audit. They need an extension and they can't file their financials at this point in time. I mean, for a bank to say that, I'm selling my shares as well and just getting out and putting my money elsewhere. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire, unfortunately, in this sector. So I would assume that they're in some sort of insolvency or their books are a mess internally. So I'm not touching it. I'm not a shareholder of it. I don't have anything that's really levered to it, but I'm watching that situation closely.
So what's the biggest lesson here?
I mean, there really isn't a lesson to take out of it. It seemed like a good investment. I mean, they were a financial institution and a U.S. chartered bank that were providing custodial services at a point in time to CEXs. That was a valuable service. I mean, unfortunately, the financial health and the bedrock of the industry that they happen to be servicing is less than optimal right now. So they've been they've really taken it on the chin.
Is there a material risk to like Coinbase or anything like that? Since you said that they're probably associated with it, or they're arm's length from that?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge into Coinbase's exposure to what they do, so I can't really comment there.
Let's move to psychedelics now. Really want to focus on this space because I see a lot of momentum building, especially with some of the people that we've been speaking with out of New York, and the interest that institutions are starting to focus on this, but yet haven't quite fully committed, that's for sure. But one of the things I wanted to touch on, there was some big news this week involving Cybin, who announced their CYB003 Phase 1/2A interim data demonstrated rapid and short-acting effects, robust psychedelic effects at low doses, positive safety and tolerability profile, top-line efficacy data expected, which is going to be late Q3 2023. When we look at this announcement, Ben, let's first just stop, pause, and backtrack. What exactly does this announcement mean and the significance of it all?
Well, I think the big significance would be that we see another study, although top-line data isn't going to be released until late Q3. They're basically forecasting that data is going to be positive. And that's another cycle of positive data that is in the space, in the same compound that we've seen through Compass and other companies, right? So it's like as these data points keep piling up, as these studies keep showing these good effects, it's another peg in the notch of the industry. Like, we're not seeing any blowups. We're not seeing anybody come up with a study that is countering and saying, yeah, they're not seeing this and having a failed study. All these studies are going through, whether it's psilocybin, DMT, LSD, they're all showing the same thing, and they're all showing it from different companies. So there's all these different data points now that just increases the confidence. Now, this study is still phase 1, phase 2, so it's still earlier than some of the other ones like Compass, but they're already, signaling that good data is on the way. And what can you say? It increases confidence that psychedelics is going to be an efficacious treatment.
You want to add to that, Anthony?
I mean, I think it's great. I mean, I was, when we were going through the headlines a couple of days ago, it was like back to back press releases of like pertinent information. I mean, I love to see Cybin making headway here outside of something with their psilocybin compounds. And I mean, I think DMT's got real applicable efficacy moving forward. So I mean, it's great to see.
Yeah. Well, I want to follow up because we've talked a little bit about getting the phase 2B data that potentially could generate a partnership with, say, a big pharma. We've talked in the past few podcasts about small pharma, another company, Awaken Life Sciences. There's a lot of analysts and institutions that are liking small pharma more and more. We've discussed this, as I've said. One analyst I was speaking to this week involved us discussing Awaken Life Sciences. They're in a phase 3 trial that is being sponsored by the NHS in the UK. Yet right now, there's not a lot of attention around the stock as far as institutions are concerned. And some of those reasons that came back was that some of these companies are difficult to buy in size. Ben, you want to elaborate on that and what it means?
Yeah, it basically means that a lot of these institutions, although they might be interested in the research and they're following it, they just simply cannot buy because if in their funds, in the way, they'll have rules of what they can buy, what exchanges, what liquidity profile has to be, for example, and disclosure requirements that go hand in hand with the exchanges. When you're on a junior exchange, it's not as high. So they just cannot simply buy right now, even if they like the research, because it's not all there. I mean, they're not. It's not meeting their covenants and to be able to buy in size because there's not enough liquidity and all the things that I just mentioned.
Right.
And that's why it's very important. And everybody talks about the increase in exchanges, the uplisting to the NASDAQ, because that takes down one important component that now the exchanges have the highest listing requirements. So you get the best access to information and so forth. So, we see with, small pharma.
How do they get from there? How do they get from where they are today to like you said, that $75 million market cap threshold to be on the NASDAQ?
Well, they have to meet that threshold some way, somehow. Maybe they can always do certain things like reverse splits if needed. If there's a threshold with share price, there's tricks like that.
Right.
Simply find a way to get up to enough market cap to be able to do that. With biotech stocks, you don't need that. There's not that revenue requirement there, so it's easier. You just have to have the right market cap, and you have to have the right share price.
Right.
And you just have to attract more investors. That's the bottom line. And get to a point where there's enough shares traded, enough average daily volume, enough liquidity going through, and you have enough listing standards. And I think those are the main ones, and there might be others. But until they fulfill these covenants, the institutions won't be able to get in size, unfortunately.
Well, to your point, and I want to bring this up, Anthony, since the small pharma data came out, data came out, there was some really strong phase 2A data that saw quick reduction in major depressive disorder. This analyst that I actually spoke to this week said that many institutions actually love the data that small pharma reported. But since that data was released, only about $4 million worth of shares was traded. So it's impossible, like we said, to own in size. But to Ben's point, is this why institutions aren't buying because of access? Why aren't they buying more?
Oh yeah, I mean,
if
they have strict liquidity requirements at the institutional level for stocks that they can get exposure to. I mean, liquidity is your best friend. I mean, you can buy whatever, but if you can't sell it, or if if it's not liquid, I mean, then it's not really sound per se. And I mean, unfortunately, the psychedelic sector does suffer from some of this. I mean, it's capital market dislocation. We've seen it in cannabis. We've seen it in psychedelics. I mean, I don't think that it warrants not investing in the company, as I think their data is positive. I think their human capital is great. I think they have a great thing going for them. They just need to get to the next level until they can garner that true institutional capital. It's also the catch-22 of being a public versus a private company. If it was a private company, this would be a completely different conversation because they'd go raise capital. It doesn't matter what the liquidity requirements are, and they're going to go raise millions quite quickly from institutions.
Well, that's the chicken and the egg, right? The reason why these companies went public to a large degree was the ability to raise capital, and you use their share price as a mechanism to create that. And now that's the irony is now it's sunk so low, and they probably didn't anticipate that it would be this depressed. Now it's going to be hard to raise capital using their share capital. So I don't know what to do. It's sort of a rock and a hard place right now.
But that's what sucks. That's what sucks in a mania. I mean, when psychedelics first came out, it was of the velocity of deals that were going public on a weekly basis was crazy. A lot of those companies sucked a lot of the liquidity out of the market from a retail perspective, which probably ultimately stunted the growth of the quality players in the space. And then you saw a lot of value destruction, which then inhibits the institutions from coming in. So I mean, yeah, public is a gift and a curse. It can go sideways very, very quickly.
Yeah, and
despite the merit of the underlying assets.
And some of the smart companies like MariMed, they raised at like $6 a share. Numinous raised at a pretty high level as well. I forget the exact price of that, but it was much higher than it was now. So some of the smart companies out there, they still have that money on the balance sheet because they raised in good times, like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And some of the companies that chose not to raise at that time, or it was before they listed, or it was too early, they're probably suffering the after effects of not having enough money on the balance sheet right now.
Yeah. Ben, I got to ask, as far as Awaken, they focus both on the drug development and the service side with their clinics. How do you think Big Pharma views companies that are involved in both drug development and services?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. Most Big Pharma companies either, from my understanding, they either invest in one or the other. Obviously, Big Pharma on the drug development side. And then you also have clinical companies that really just do the services thing. So that's sort of the tricky nature of whether we're going to see a bunch of licensing and partnerships with Big Pharma, because psychedelics sort of melds the both, right? It has the drug development, and they have their specific versions of psychedelic drugs, the NCEs, but they also need the clinical services to activate that and get that therapy. So that's sort of like the $1 million question right now. How much is Big Pharma going to partake? Because it's kind of straddles the fence of both realms, and also because psychedelic assisted therapy does compete with their existing SSRI drugs, Prozac and the likes, for depression right now. So it is a competition to what the money that they're making on their existing depression medication. So it's going to be very interesting to find out how it goes.
Which is massive.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, Anthony? Go ahead.
The SSRI market and the depression market is huge. I mean, everybody's hooked on some sort of fucking Prozac or Xanax or Klonopin or God knows what. I mean, that's the mental health industry right now. It's not curing, it's just patching over it. Fortunately enough, these psychedelic compounds and these psychedelic therapies have been proven to alleviate mental disorders and cure mental disorders versus just put a patch on it therapeutically. And I mean, I think that Big Pharma is going to more so make a defensive play by gobbling up these psychedelic companies versus an offensive play as to what the long-term value of them are. I mean, it's what pharma does. I mean, in healthcare, if a competitor comes along, usually they buy it and they'll either integrate it into their current mix, or they'll buy it and they'll just shelf it. So it's no longer competition to their it's no longer a competition to their revenue.
How about this?
That's a question I wanted to.
Sorry, I just want to add this. Get my conspiracy theory hat on for a second. But what if Big Pharma were to partner or license or buy into this, take a joint venture with some of these companies, and then do the psychedelic assisted therapy, and also during the course of that action recommend their SSRI medication for like a maintenance dose until in between therapies?
They easily could. I mean, they easily could do that. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. But the thing is the destructive nature of like SSRIs and like the antidepressants. Like, people understand what the trade-offs are with those, but they don't have another option right now as far as therapeutics go. I mean, if you know anybody that takes Xanax or that takes any sort of SSRIs for like anxiety, like, they have mental deterioration. Like, I know several people that take stimulants and antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, and you can just see that their cognition and their mental acuity has gone to shit. Their memory's gone. I mean, they lose their train of thought. It eats away at your brain. Psychedelics have been proven to actually improve neuroplasticity and mental acuity and actually stimulate brain cell growth. So while I do think there probably will be a place for SSRIs or some sort of antidepressant medication in its form today, in the future, if psychedelics really do scale and get traction, I mean, I hope that they just go away and these psychedelic NCEs and compounds that come into the market, just take them out completely, because they're not, like I said, they're not to cure. It's to get you hooked on them and have you taking them in very, very long periods of time.
That's what I wanted to ask you guys. If the psychedelic industry materializes into what many hope it will, what happens to SSRIs, Anthony?
They should be done. They should be done. I mean, obviously, we know very little about the brain and how it works. So, I'm just going to assume that psychedelics aren't going to work for everybody, barring they work at all. We haven't really proven that they do work time and time again for what they're trying to cure. There's cases and there's efficacy that's been proven, but I think they wipe out SSRIs and Zoloft and Prozac and whatever the medication, Cymbalta, and the medications that people are taking for like bipolar disorder or any of these crazy mental disorders. Yeah, I hope it just wipes them out completely.
That would be the goal.
Which is what gives so much blue sky to these companies to begin with.
Yeah, that's the goal, and that's the benefit, and why people are so high on it, because you wouldn't have to take this because of the neuroplasticity and the growth of dendrites in the brain and neural connections, that you don't have to take this any medication between. Just once every 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, whatever the case may be, depending on the compound. That's all you got to take, and then we can eliminate SSRIs.
But the thing is too, and I think the thing that people need, that we're going to need to study, and it's only time will tell, is yes, they're showing efficacy in the short term, but what's the long term look like? Like because depression is something that can go away, and something changes in your environment, and it comes back with fucking vengeance. So it's very delicate what they're trying to do.
Well, from what I'm hearing, it's like, yeah, it's not like, you go on this psychedelic journey and it just cures everything. There's a lot of, I guess,
yeah, but are there diminishing returns, like cannabis, other drugs? Like, you gain a tolerance towards them. You even gain a tolerance towards pharmaceutical drugs. Like, if you're on Adderall, over time they increase your prescription from a milligram dosage because your body starts to need more and more of it to get the same effect. It has diminishing returns. Psychedelics, I think they don't have those kind of diminishing returns to that degree.
Well, you know what? We talked to, who's the guy I forget his name, but anyway, gentleman we spoke to in California, his son was on suicidal watch. Ketamine changed his life, but to your point, Anthony, after a certain period of time, it's like he became immune to it and couldn't do as much anymore, and he had to pivot into other compounds. But yeah, I don't know enough about it, but it begs the question to be asked over the growth of the industry. I think that
was because he was doing you also can't clinics, like he was doing the repeated dose every week.
Yeah, you also can't have people walking around in like these lucid psychedelic states, just constantly, like a constant trip per se. I'm not saying that's what they're going towards, but you can't have people dosing LSD or psilocybin on a daily basis or like a weekly basis, to where it's just like leveling you out, tailing off, then you need to go get another dose and just kind of rinse and repeat. That's not sustainable.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap things up. I got a $100 bet right now, Ben. If you can actually say the word neuroplasticity 5 times without stumbling. Are you ready? $100.
I don't think. Should I take that? Okay, I'll try. I'm game.
It's if you look. Ready? $100. Ready?
Neuroplasticity.
Set, go.
Neuroplasticity. How'd I do?
I owe you $100.
Yep.
There you go.
Well done.
That was done.
Well,
Anthony,
done.
give it a try.
Well done.
You want to try it?
I'm probably not going to do it as well as you just did.
Well, enjoy golf. Good weekend, obviously, to be 82 degrees and sunny, a little humid. But man, oh man, sports world. I don't know if you guys saw, but the Boston Bruins, just when you thought they were good, they're 48-8-5. Made a bunch of trades over the past week. But one thing I can't stand in the NHL right now, and Tampa started this whole thing because you're so far ahead in standings. You acquire all these players, and then you put your all-star players on long-term injury reserve, which is like giving them a 6-week layoff, but they're not even injured. Like, this has to change in the league, because it's definitely a loophole that some teams have found and are taking advantage of, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Tampa Bay did it with Kucherov. Was it last year? It was 2 years ago, and they won the cup. It's a bullshit rule in hockey.
Yeah.
I'd be taking advantage of it too if I was a team. Yeah. I mean, the Bruins are ridiculous. Like, it's like a historic season that they're having.
It's ridiculous.
But like we all know, it's all about what you do in the playoffs. So if they fall short and they don't win the cup, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
How about that record, though?
NFL Combine.
Boston, what are they, 48?
It's insane.
That's like a
48, 8, and 5.
That's like a Montreal Canadiens record in the mid-70s when they would go like...
No. It's Detroit in 96. They had 62 wins, 13 losses, and 7 ties for 131 points. I'm a Red Wings fan.
That's insane.
But I think you're going to see, like, Boston has 48, 8, and 5. That's 61 games. They have 21 games to go, 21 games left, and they already have 101 points.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That's insane.
Yeah. That is,
that's NFL Combine's going on this weekend, so it'll be interesting to see some of the conversations and rumors that happen out of there, because I know a lot of GMs will be there, talk about trades heading into the draft, but I can't keep up with this draft right now. What appeared to be, the top 6, 7 picks a week ago seems to be completely upended, and I'll be anxious to see if you see teams like Carolina that get aggressive and really move up in the draft, and teams like Detroit move down, or even Seattle. Like there's a big interest with Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levy, and Anthony Richardson as far as quarterbacks are concerned at the top of that draft.
I'm going to start here. It is very interesting to me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Anthony. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ben. I was going to say
I was just going to say it's very interesting to me. I'm following it pretty closely. To me, I think it's going to be interesting to see where Bryce Young goes. If he goes number 1, or like he probably will, or if somebody actually trades up to get him, because he's going to probably measure out at around 5'10.5". Word is he's probably going to weigh in at about 200 pounds, and his frame concerns some people. But I think he's like a better version of Doug Flutie. I don't know if you remember Doug Flutie, or audience out there, how he came back to the NFL at the age of 35 when 21-9 as a starter, except he's like Doug Flutie, except better. He's like a better version of Doug Flutie, and I'd love to see how that's going to work in today's football.
Well, if anyone doesn't know Doug Flutie, you can go onto YouTube and type in top 10 biggest Hail Marys of all time. Yeah. Brent Musburger calls it. It's Boston College, Miami, throws a bomb. But that's what Doug Flutie's best known as. But I don't like how tall is Kyler Murray? Is he 5'10"?
5'10". He might be 5'9".
No, 5'10" and an 8.
He's short. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the quarterbacks, though, like last year it was what? Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, nothing really to write home about. I don't think this draft class is going to have anything to write home about. But you look at the past 3 years, we got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Tua, Herbert, Burrow. Yeah. I mean, the QB talent that's came in the past 3 to 5 years has been like generational talent, like just stacked at the QB position, and we've taken some off years. I think Jalen Carter is the best player in the draft.
I do too.
Did you hear about his arrest?
I saw that.
I did.
It's not good.
I don't think it matters. It's not going to.
I haven't watched Will Anderson enough. Is he good?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Jalen Carter.
One thing I found.
Jalen Carter is the only person in this draft that I think makes your team better on day one.
One thing I was reading about, because I think Detroit's going to have a decent team. They're going to be probably favored to win that division next year. But if you had the 6th pick, would you trade that to the Rams for Jalen Ramsey?
I would.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I would.
Both?
I would.
Both would?
But...
I would.
He's 29 years old.
Who are you going to get at 6?
Yeah.
Is he 29? Jalen Ramsey's 29 already?
I know. I looked at that. I'm like, where the heck does time go? Like, wasn't he drafted the same year as...
Oh, I'm thinking of Derwin James. Derwin James is younger than Jalen Ramsey. But, I mean, Detroit need defense impact players now. Like, they needed them last season. Their offense was putting up 40-something points a game, and their defense was letting up 40-something points a game. It was hard to watch. I mean, I had Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamal Williams on my fantasy team, so I was paying attention. And, I mean, they'd run up the score, and every time they'd score a touchdown, the other team would go on the field and then score right back and march down the field.
Those are two good picks in your fantasy. Wow. You
I
must
won.
Did you
I
win?
won 4 out of 6 championships last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are unbelievable. What did Jamal Williams have?
He had
10, 12
17?
touchdowns?
14 touchdowns.
Oh, was it 14?
17?
I thought it was
17?
17. But
Oh, he didn't have less than 14. I know for a fact.
I
yeah,
love that guy. Great,
Yeah.
great personality.
Yeah.
That's you know.
I had him.
I don't know what the skill
him
set-
and Miles Sanders were my running back tandems on a lot of teams, and they crushed it
Yeah.
for me last year. But yeah, I
Here
mean,
we are.
Detroit needs an impact player on defense. I mean, knowing what I know with the Dolphins, I mean, you look at Xavier Howard. The problem is his secondary D-backs get old very quickly. Like Xavier
Don't
Howard,
they?
Xavier Howard's still great, but he's old. Like he's just aged very quickly. He's not as fast and agile as he used to be. Ramsey might be there too.
Secondary players and running backs, lot in common.
Yeah.
Man, I remember the 90s. It was a running backs lead with Barry Sanders, Emmett Smith, Marshall Faulk. It is flat out a quarterback's wide receiver
Oh yeah.
environment now, and I don't see that changing.
No.
Not anytime soon. Needless to say, we're still in football withdrawal, right?
Yeah, I'd like
I
it
don't know
to
what
come
to
back
watch
very
this
soon.
weekend. Yeah, I watched that Jake Paul fight last week. It was pathetic. I'm like,
I
this
didn't
is
even
what
buy. I didn't
sport-
waste my money.
Yeah.
I was hoping he got knocked out.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy your round of golf, Benjamin. Enjoy the rest of your weekend too, and we'll catch up with you guys. We're heading to PDAC, Toronto,
Yep.
Canada next week. That'll be fun. We'll see you guys in person. Hopefully, we can do a podcast in person. All right.
Pump for some cold weather.
See you soon. See you,
I'll
Ben.
see you on Monday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.